Even as her father, Prince Andrew, faced relentless public scandal, Princess Eugenie remained consistently by his side, attending private family gatherings, retreating from the spotlight, and offering silent support without adding fuel to the media storm. That kind of loyalty is easy to dismiss, but difficult to maintain under scrutiny. Eugenie never staged a dramatic defense, nor did she issue hollow denials. She simply stayed connected, even when it would have been easier to distance herself. If you love getting the real story behind the palace walls, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and tap the notification bell so you never miss an update. This quiet, steady loyalty wasn't about blind allegiance. It was about choosing family bonds over reputation management. Her approach to controversy, particularly within the York family, reveals a strategy not rooted in PR spin but in emotional restraint. She doesn't attempt to outshine the headlines or reposition herself as a royal rebel. Instead, she embraces a quieter truth, that dignity sometimes means staying still while everything else spins. It's not glamorous, but it's honest. And for Eugenie, that honesty speaks louder than any statement ever could. For years, Princess Eugenie has floated in and out of the royal spotlight, never quite the center of attention, but always hovering somewhere in the frame. Her public image? Polite, polished, sometimes distant. But according to people who work behind palace walls, the real Eugenie is nothing like the cool, curated persona we usually see. One former royal staffer summed it up in a way that sticks. She actually sees you. In a place where eye contact and first names are optional, that small detail speaks volumes. Behind closed doors, Eugenie reportedly treats staff with a level of respect that's, frankly, rare in that world. She remembers names. She asks questions. She says thank you and means it, not because someone's watching, but because that's who she is. And while it shouldn't be revolutionary, in a family where protocol often outweighs personality, it absolutely is. Several former aides and butlers have quietly said the same thing. She's kind, grounded, and shockingly normal. If you love getting the real story behind the palace walls, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and tap the notification bell so you never miss an update. A lot of that normalcy, they say, comes from how she's chosen to live. Instead of opting for one of the palatial residences offered to royals, Eugenie lives in Ivy Cottage, a modest 3-bedroom home tucked away on the grounds of Kensington Palace. Compared to the grandeur of the Royal Lodge or Buckingham Palace, it's practically humble. And that's not an accident. It's intentional. Eugenie has built a life that prioritizes quiet over glamour and consistency over spectacle. She works a full-time job in the art world, balancing exhibitions and industry events with the occasional royal appearance. Not because she has to, but because she wants to. For Eugenie, a career outside the firm isn't a rebellion. It's just life. Her days are structured around deadlines, not designer fittings. Her Instagram feed? Less tiaras, more toddler toys. And the people around her say that's not strategy, it's sincerity. But sincerity doesn't shield you from family drama. And Eugenie's father, Prince Andrew, has made sure of that. Even when she stayed quiet, the headlines haven't. The scandal surrounding his ties to Jeffrey Epstein has loomed over the York family for years, and Eugenie's position in that storm is one of quiet endurance. She hasn't publicly commented. She hasn't done interviews. But those close to the situation say she's remained deeply loyal, privately supporting her father while publicly avoiding the fallout. That loyalty runs deep. Sources describe her as emotionally bonded to her father in a way that's unshakable, even when it comes at a cost. She's been spotted at private family gatherings, slipping in through side entrances and avoiding the press entirely. In a family known for orchestrated appearances, her decision to show up without fanfare and without apology speaks volumes. That same sense of discretion carries into how she interacts with the rest of the royal family. Unlike others who've either distanced themselves completely or doubled down on visibility, Eugenie has chosen the middle path. She attends important events when needed but often retreats when things get chaotic. Her presence is measured, purposeful, never performative, and that control over her visibility feels less like avoidance and more like emotional intelligence. Even when controversy has swirled around the family, whether it's Prince Andrew's legal troubles or the public rifts involving Harry and Meghan, Eugenie has consistently stayed in her lane. There are no strategic leaks, no social media subtweets, just a quiet, steady approach that values privacy over press. According to insiders, this isn't about evasion, it's about emotional maturity. Eugenie leads with empathy, not ego. And behind palace walls, it shows. Staff recall small but telling moments. Handwritten notes of thanks, unexpected conversations about real life, sincere interest in their families. It's not flashy, but it's deeply felt. One former palace aide recalled a time when Eugenie, unprompted, asked how her child's surgery had gone weeks after it was mentioned in passing. She remembered. No one else did. That kind of emotional attentiveness isn't just rare in royal circles. It's rare, period. Especially when paired with a life that could easily be insulated from everyday struggles. Eugenie's emotional range, and her willingness to engage with the world beyond titles and headlines, sets her apart in ways that often go unnoticed by the public. Her bond with her sister, Princess Beatrice, reinforces that groundedness. The two have always been close, but in recent years, their shared desire for a quieter, more stable life has become more apparent. There's even talk, unconfirmed, but persistent, that they considered stepping even further back from public roles, possibly renouncing royal titles altogether. Not in protest, but in pursuit of normalcy. Their personal decisions seem to reflect a kind of unspoken agreement, that family matters more than fame, and stability outweighs spectacle. It's a shift that feels especially stark when compared to the drama orbiting other royal family members. In a world where every move is dissected and magnified, Eugenie and Beatrice are choosing subtlety. Still, that subtlety hasn't shielded them from the impact of scandal. The Epstein case, and Prince Andrew's involvement, cast a shadow that's impossible to ignore. And while Eugenie's silence could be read as complicity, those who know her say it's something else entirely, restraint. She's well aware of the optics. But rather than engaging in damage control or public defense, she's chosen to stay grounded in her personal truth. Sources say she's never denied the seriousness of the allegations, but she's also refused to abandon her father during the fallout. It's a complicated position, and one that doesn't play well in tabloids. But insiders argue it reflects a deeper sense of loyalty and emotional clarity. She's not trying to win public favor. She's trying to hold her family together. Ironically, Eugenie's approach may be the most modern of them all. Unlike some of her cousins, who've made headlines by either fleeing or fighting the institution, she's chosen to redefine her role quietly. And that quiet has power. Even her friendship with Harry and Meghan, often whispered about, has been handled with care. There's no performative solidarity, but there's also no cold distance. Just respectful connection. She was one of the first royals to visit the Sussexes in California, but she didn't post about it. She didn't grant interviews or play into the media circus. She showed up and then went home. No spectacle, no sound bites. That's Eugenie. It's a stark contrast to the polished, public-facing image that defines other royal women, like Princess Catherine. Where Kate leans into duty and elegance, Eugenie leans into relatability. She's less about legacy and more about living, flawed, emotional, quietly sincere. And that approach, while understated, might be exactly what the monarchy needs more of. In times of upheaval, it's not the loudest voices that resonate. It's the consistent ones. Eugenie doesn't need to dominate a room or headline a gala to make an impact. Her influence lies in how she treats people when no one's looking. And according to those who've seen her in unguarded moments, that's where she shines the brightest. As the royal family continues to evolve, and inevitably contract, it's these behind-the-scenes glimpses that might redefine what royal relevance actually looks like. Eugenie's day-to-day choices paint a picture of someone who's chosen integrity over influence and kindness over control. She may never dominate the front pages, but she's quietly rewriting what it means to hold a royal title in the 21st century. Whether the public ever sees that version of her remains to be seen. But if former staffers and insiders are to be believed, the real Princess Eugenie isn't hiding. She's just choosing not to perform. And in a world obsessed with image, that's not just rare. That's revolutionary. So if you've ever dismissed Eugenie as just another royal riding the wave of privilege, maybe it's time to take a second look. Because behind the palace gates, the story's a little different. And it's worth telling. If you're into stories that pull back the curtain on the royals and reveal what really goes on behind the gilded walls, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We've got plenty more tea where that came from. And then there's her mother, Sarah Ferguson. If there's one person who shaped Eugenie's approach to the world, it's Foji. Wild, unpredictable, often controversial, but fiercely loving. Sarah's rollercoaster relationship with the royal institution gave her daughters a front-row seat to scandal, rejection, and resilience. It's no coincidence that Eugenie grew up with a built-in lesson in surviving the tabloids without losing yourself. Eugenie watched her mother take hit after hit and still come out swinging. But she didn't mimic Sarah's approach. She studied it, and then she adjusted. Where her mother often fought back loudly, Eugenie chooses a quieter path. There's still strength there, but it's laced with calm. It's the kind of strength that doesn't need to shout. And that's what makes her stand out. She doesn't try to fix the institution. She just quietly refuses to let it shape her into something she's not. That makes her relationship with other royals, particularly those closer to the throne, a little more complex. Prince William, for example, plays the game with a strategist's precision. Every photo op, every public comment, every carefully timed appearance is part of a broader, institutional brand. And while that might make sense for a future king, it puts Eugenie's more natural, unpolished approach into stark relief. She's not staging PR moments. She's not aiming for perfect optics. And she certainly isn't tailoring her private life to avoid scrutiny. Her approach is more human, more flawed, but also, arguably, more real. And in a family that often feels like it's auditioning for permanence, Eugenie's authenticity feels refreshing, even if it sometimes ruffles feathers behind the scenes. Still, no matter how independent she is, Eugenie's tied to a family brand that's constantly in damage control mode. The York family, as a collective, has carried its fair share of royal embarrassment. Between Prince Andrew's scandals and Foji's never-ending reinvention tour, the York sisters have had to carve out stability in a landscape that's always shifting. Eugenie's strategy? Don't feed the beast. While her parents lurch from headlines to headlines, she stays quiet. She keeps the family bonds intact without amplifying the noise. It's a balancing act, one that very few public figures, let alone royals, pull off. But Eugenie walks that line with remarkable consistency. She doesn't denounce her family, but she also doesn't defend the indefensible. And in royal terms, that's practically diplomatic genius. According to insiders, those choices don't come easy. They are not passive. They are deliberate. Eugenie has had to watch a name trend for reasons entirely out of her control. She's had to endure awkward silence at charity events when her last name stirred controversy. And she's had to smile through moments where she knew cameras were capturing the expression, not the truth. One staffer recounted a moment during a post-scandal walkabout where Eugenie greeted a crowd that included protesters holding signs about her father. She didn't flinch. She didn't flee. She kept going, thanking people, shaking hands, and listening. That's not detachment. That's discipline. And it reveals a deeper truth about how she manages pain, by absorbing it quietly, not by turning it into performance. And yet, even as the monarchy splinters and modernizes under pressure, Eugenie remains surprisingly relevant, especially when compared to someone like Meghan Markle, who took a very different route. Meghan left the institution, built her own platform, and fought to control the narrative. Eugenie, by contrast, stayed and built a life around the gaps. Both women faced scrutiny. Both wanted autonomy. But where Meghan exited with a manifesto, Eugenie simply slipped into the background and got to work. No docuseries, no interviews, no rebranding. Just consistent, private living. And somehow, that choice has granted her the very thing so many royals chase: emotional credibility. It's that quiet credibility that makes her such a wild card in the family. She's not a working royal in the traditional sense, but she's more visible than the royals who walked away completely. She's part of the system, but not owned by it. And when the monarchy eventually trims its public-facing lineup even further, there's a decent chance Eugenie will still be standing, if only because she never tried to be the center of attention to begin with. She's already redefining what royal relevance looks like, not through appearances, but through absence. Not by saying more, but by knowing when to say nothing at all. It's subtle, but powerful. And in a family that often equates silence with secrecy, Eugenie's silence feels more like strategy. She knows what she represents, and she refuses to let the tabloids define it. Even Queen Camilla, once a royal outsider herself, seems to have recognized Eugenie's unique standing. While palace insiders rarely spill direct quotes, a recurring theme has emerged. Eugenie is seen as stable. Not flashy, not dramatic, just stable. And in royal circles, that might be the highest compliment there is. Camilla's own journey, from scandal magnate to reluctant queen, has reportedly made her more empathetic to royals like Eugenie, who live in the shadow of controversy they didn't create. There's an unspoken bond there, forged not through titles, but through mutual understanding. Both women know what it's like to be mischaracterized, to be reduced to someone else's headline, and both have learned to endure it with grace. That said, not everyone in the firm likely sees Eugenie's approach as ideal. The Waleses, William and Catherine, are all about structure. The photo ops, the statements, the holiday cards, they are carefully calibrated. And when someone like Eugenie operates outside that rhythm, it raises eyebrows. But maybe that's the point. Eugenie's not trying to be a model royal. She's just trying to be a decent person. And the people who've worked with her say that's exactly what she is. A former palace housekeeper described her as the only one who ever offered to help carry a box. Another said she once insisted they sit and have tea together on a stressful afternoon, just to chat. No protocol, no agenda, just genuine human interaction. It's a vibe that actually aligns her more closely with Princess than most people realize. And, famously no-nonsense and allergic to drama, has always marched to her own rhythm. And Eugenie's low-key approach feels like a modern echo of that same ethos. Do your duty, stay grounded, avoid theatrics. There's a reason both women are often described as quietly competent. They don't dominate headlines, but they don't make messes either. And in an institution that thrives on hierarchy and spectacle, that might be the most subversive position of all, being effective without needing attention. Of course, much of this ethos likely comes from the influence of Queen Elizabeth herself. Eugenie was one of the grandchildren who had real access to the Queen, not just at balcony events, but in private family moments. And those who were there say Her Majesty had a soft spot for Eugenie's warmth and honesty. The Queen didn't traffic in emotional displays, but she valued consistency. And Eugenie, even as a child, brought that into the room. In the later years of the Queen's reign, as scandal piled on scandal, it was often Eugenie who managed to bring calm into the chaos. Not by doing anything extraordinary, but simply by being present, kind, and emotionally steady. So, what do you do when you're born into a life you didn't ask for, and one you can't walk away from entirely? If you're Princess Eugenie, you adapt. You build something quieter, something real, inside a system that rarely rewards subtlety. You hold your head high even when your name trends for all the wrong reasons. And you keep showing up, not for attention, but for the people who matter. Because for all the noise surrounding the royals, the insiders closest to her keep repeating the same theme. Eugenie isn't performing. She isn't playing a role. She's just being herself, consistently, kindly, and without the need for headlines to validate her. And honestly, that kind of presence has become a rarity in royal circles. Even the choice to spend so much time at Royal Lodge, the home she shares access to through her parents, speaks volumes. It's not about clinging to grandeur, it's about proximity to family. Despite what the outside world may think, she stayed close to her roots, close to her father, close to the life she knows, imperfections and all. Critics might view that as enabling, or worse, willful ignorance. But those who've actually been behind those closed doors say something else. That is an expression of loyalty. Not blind loyalty, but one laced with compassion. She sees the full picture of a family, not just the headlines. And she chooses, again and again, to show up for them in the ways she can. Does that mean she's never conflicted? Of course not. She's human. Former staff described moments where you could see the emotional toll behind her eyes, at charity events, weddings, even the occasional public walkabout. It's not easy keeping quiet when your family name is attached to one of the biggest scandals the monarchy's ever faced. And it's even harder when silence is mistaken for weakness. But Eugenie's silence isn't passive. It's purposeful. It's a kind of stillness that takes strength, choosing not to lash out, not to defend, not to spin a narrative, just to live, quietly and intentionally, while the storm passes. And in today's hyperreactive world, that alone feels almost radical. The royal brand has been through the ringer, fractures, fallout, and full-on PR disasters. Through all of that, Eugenie has become something unexpected, a quiet counterbalance. Not the rebel, not the heir, just someone holding the line between tradition and truth. And maybe that's why people are finally starting to take notice. Because in the end, it's not about how many ribbon cuttings you attend or how many causes you champion publicly. It's about who you are when no one's watching. And based on everything former insiders have said, when no one's watching, Princess Eugenie is kind, thoughtful, loyal, grounded, and real. That might not be the kind of royal story that makes front-page news, but it's the kind that stays with you. And in a world full of royal performances, that kind of authenticity, it just might be the most powerful thing of all. If you found yourself rethinking what you thought you knew about Princess Eugenie, don't forget to hit like, share it with someone who still thinks all royals are the same, and subscribe for more unfiltered stories from behind the palace walls. Because sometimes, the most interesting people are the ones who don't make a scene, but make a difference.